So imagine you just spent, I don't know, maybe $1 million on this beautiful luxury condominium.
Right.
You've spent months looking at floor plans, you've scrutinized the developers, you're paying these massive central fund fees every single month, and basically you feel secure.
You feel like you've made a solid investment.
Exactly. And then one Tuesday afternoon, you find out that some random teenager with a smartphone, just someone with a bit of free time and a public Google form, just legally hijacked your entire building's operating budget.
It sounds completely absurd, like a joke.
It really does. But today, we're actually looking at exactly how a tiny two-question digital shortcut almost brought a massive 521-unit mega complex to its absolute knees.
Yeah, it sounds like some sort of cyberpunk thriller or something. But the vulnerability we're analyzing today is just incredibly mundane. And honestly, that's what makes it so terrifying.
Yeah.
We're stepping completely out of the theoretical here
Yeah.
into a very real, incredibly high-stakes administrative battlefield.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today's stack of sources it's this fascinating, almost voyeuristic look into real-time grassroots governance.
It really is.
We're digging into an actual paper trail from a massive condominium project called River Heaven Sharonkrung, and I gotta say, the material is incredibly raw.
Very raw. We're talking about actual screenshots of internal, highly heated line chat logs between the residents and the building management.
Which are wild to read, by the way. Plus, we have this very dense, highly sophisticated legal demand letter that was drafted by a resident. And on top of that, these internal educational circulars being passed around to mobilize the community.
The sheer volume of this documentation points to a community that has really woken up. They've realized that, paying monthly maintenance fees doesn't actually buy you peace of mind.
No, not at all.
It simply buys you a seat at the table. And if you aren't paying close attention to how that table is set, you're absolutely going to be taken advantage of.
Which brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. Our goal today is fundamental. We are focusing entirely on educating and empowering co-owners and condominium residents on their rights.
Right.
We want to take you, the listener, and really equip you with the tactical, the legal, and the operational knowledge to understand your leverage in these situations.
Because you do have leverage, a lot of it.
Exactly. We are going to deconstruct this entire case study so you can spot these exact same vulnerabilities in your own building, protect your data, and most importantly, safeguard your central funds. Okay, let's unpack this.
We really have to start with the catalyst here.
Yeah.
And the catalyst, surprisingly enough, isn't some shadowy boardroom conspiracy. It's just an attempt at modernization that goes horribly wrong.
Right. So looking at the sources, we have this seemingly harmless administrative announcement sent out by the River Heaven juristic person, and they're overseen by a property management company that's referred to in the documents as SMART.
Yeah, and they're gearing up for their upcoming annual general meeting, or AGM, for the year 2569.
Now, for anyone who follows condominium governance, you already know the AGM is basically the nucleus of power for the whole building.
Oh, absolutely. It's the single most important day of the year. When the budget is approved, the juristic committee is elected, and the property management company's contract is either renewed or terminated.
So a lot of money and jobs are on the line.
Exactly. And holding a valid AGM is a very strict legal requirement under the law.
And the management team clearly knows this, right? Because they send out this urgent notice asking all the co-owners and residents to update their current mailing addresses.
Which, on the surface, makes sense.
Yeah, the stated goal is perfectly logical. They want to ensure that the official invitation letters and all the accompanying financial documents actually reach the owners accurately so nothing gets lost in the mail.
Right. And they set a hard deadline for this June 20, 2569.
And they offer a few different channels for residents to do this update. You can email a specific Gmail address, you can message their line official account, or, and this is the focal point of the entire drama we're talking about today, you can scan this massive QR code printed at the bottom of the notice.
And that QR code links directly to a Google form.
Which sounds easy enough, but they also include a rather blunt warning.
Yeah, they do.
The notice basically says that if you fail to update your information by the deadline, they will just default to sending the documents to whatever old address is currently on file. Or they'll just drop the critical AGM invitation into your physical mailbox at the condo.
Which is a huge problem, because if you don't actually live in the unit, say you're an investor and you're renting it out, that means your tenant is the one who gets your legal voting documents.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's not good. But, okay, I want to push back on the cynicism for just a second here.
Go ahead.
Let's look at this purely from a property management perspective.
Uh,
Isn't this just like good modern UX?
How do you mean?
Well, they're using QR codes and Google Forms instead of forcing 521 busy unit owners to physically march down to the juristic office during working hours, stand in a long line, and fill out paper forms with a ballpoint pen.
I mean, I see your point.
Isn't this exactly the kind of frictionless, digital-first upgrade you'd want in a modern building? It just feels really efficient to me.
What's fascinating here is how this relentless pursuit of a frictionless user experience completely blinds organizations to fundamental security protocols.
Oh, so they traded security for speed.
Exactly. The intention behind a QR code is definitely convenience. But when we examine the screenshot of the actual Google form provided in our sources, the execution is where the entire system just utterly collapses.
It really is shockingly brief. I'm looking at the screenshot right now, and it's almost comical how little is on there.
The form asks for exactly two pieces of information, literally just room number and current address.
And that's it?
That is it. Below that, there is just a submit button. There is no other architecture to this form whatsoever.
And it's that specific, tiny two-question interface that triggers an absolute avalanche of backlash in the internal resident line chat logs.
Because, as you can guess, convenience can never override security when you are dealing with legally mandated governance procedures.
Right.
The residents immediately realized that the management company had basically traded the integrity of the building's legal registry for a shortcut.
And we actually get to watch this realization happen in real time through these chat screenshots. There's this one resident who goes by the display name Boss, and I have to say, Boss is sharp.
Extremely sharp.
He immediately spots the glaring vulnerability, raises the alarm to the entire community chat, and demands someone forward his analysis directly to the building manager.
Boss identifies the most critical failure right out of the gate, the complete absence of identity verification.
Yeah, because this is a public Google form.
Exactly. Anyone with a smartphone who walks past that poster in the lobby, or anyone who just gets forwarded the link in a random line group, can access it.
The form doesn't ask for a legal name. It doesn't ask for a passport or a tie ID number. It doesn't require you to, upload a scan of your title deed to prove ownership or anything.
No, nothing. It doesn't even use a basic two-factor authentication system. It literally just asks you to type in a room number.
Which creates an immediate, highly exploitable vector for malice. Boss poses this brilliant question to the group. He asks, how does the management company know if the person hitting submit is the actual legal co-owner?
And the answer is they don't.
It's essentially like an exclusive nightclub, leaving a blank guest list on a clipboard out on the sidewalk, and just letting anyone walking by write down who gets the VIP invitations.
That's a great way to put it.
You are handing over the keys to the kingdom without checking a single ID. What stops a disgruntled resident from scanning that code, typing in the room number of a neighbor they hate, and redirecting all their legal mail to a fake address?
Absolutely nothing stops them. And Boss takes this beyond just a practical, everyday vulnerability. He actually elevates the discussion into a massive legal compliance failure.
Right, he brings up the law.
Yes, specifically citing the Personal Data Protection Act, or PDPA.
For our listeners who might not be familiar, the PDPA is Thailand's equivalent to the GDPR in Europe. It is a very robust, heavily enforced piece of legislation regarding data privacy, and it carries some severe penalties for non-compliance.
And Boss systematically deconstructs this Google form using the strict framework of the PDPA.
Yeah.
He points out that this form is explicitly collecting personally identifiable information.
Because a specific mailing address tied directly to a specific unit is personal data.
Exactly. And by extension, it's tied to its owner. Yet this form fails every single foundational requirement of the privacy law.
Let's unpack Boss's checklist here, because I think this is an incredible framework for anyone listening to apply to their own building's management.
It really is.
First off, he highlights that there is absolutely no message stating the purpose of the data collection anywhere on the form.
Which is a huge violation. Under the PDPA, you cannot just vacuum up data for fun. You must explicitly state in legally binding language why this data is being collected and exactly what it will be used for.
So the form fails on step one.
Big time.
Second, he notes there is no data retention period stated.
And this is a major, major liability. Think about it. How long is the juristic person storing this newly submitted address?
Are they just keeping it on a random Google server indefinitely?
Right. Do they delete it after the AGM? The law requires a defined life cycle for personal data, And this form just offers a digital black hole.
Third, and this one is truly wild to me, the form does not officially identify the data controller.
Yeah, it has a generic header image that says River Heaven, but that isn't a legal entity.
It's just the name of the building.
Exactly. It does not state the registered legal name of the juristic person. Furthermore, it completely fails to name the property management company, Smart, who are presumably the ones actually processing this data on the back end.
And if you are collecting sensitive information, the user has a fundamental legal right to know exactly which corporate entity is taking possession of it.
Without a doubt.
Finally, Boss points out the total lack of any contact information for data privacy concerns.
There is no data protection officer listed. There isn't even a generic email address provided on the form for someone to request their data be deleted.
Boss perfectly diagnoses this. It's a blatant, actionable PDPA violation. The management company basically deployed an unofficial, unverified public data gathering tool that strips away all legal disclaimers.
It's reckless.
So let's escalate this from just an administrative blunder to a real-world disaster scenario. Let's imagine a bad actor.
Yeah.
Maybe someone who really wants to secure a seat on the juristic committee, or just a resident who has a deep vendetta against the current management. They have access to this public link.
Right.
They could easily sit in their living room, drink a cup of coffee, and systematically submit 50 fake forwarding addresses for 50 different units that they know usually vote against them.
And that is the exact nightmare scenario this lack of security invites. Consider the aftermath of that. The AGM happens, the votes are cast, and then a week later, those 50 actual owners realize they never received their invitation packets.
So they storm down to the juristic office and demand an explanation.
Exactly. And how does the management company defend themselves in that moment?
They just pull up the Google sheet and say, well, look, someone submitted a new address for your room on June 15th.
But the owners aren't going to accept that. They will demand proof. They will ask, prove that I submitted it.
And the management company will have absolutely nothing to show them.
Nothing. They have no login credentials, no IP address logging that is legally admissible to tie to a specific user, no digital signature.
They just have an anonymous timestamp on a spreadsheet that says room 123.
Right. Management has voluntarily stripped themselves of all deniability and all forensic proof.
Which introduces a much, much larger problem. Because if the management company cannot prove that they sent the invitations to the correct, legally verified addresses, the entire foundation of the upcoming AGM is essentially built on sand.
Yes.
We really have to pivot now to the severe legal ramifications of this bad data, because a wrong mailing address isn't just an inconvenience in condo law.
No, it is a fatal error.
To understand the gravity of this, we have to examine this formal demand letter included in our source stack. And let me tell you, this document represents a massive escalation.
We are definitely no longer dealing with frustrated lying chat messages here. We are looking at a highly sophisticated, tactical legal strike by a resident.
The precision of this letter is just remarkable. It's drafted by the co-owner of a specific room, 225-8378. But what's truly notable here is the date. June 19th, 2569.
Right.
That is exactly one day before the management's hard deadline to update the addresses.
Talk about cutting it close.
Yeah. This owner clearly saw the notice, instantly recognized the catastrophic legal risk of this Google form, and spent the next few days drafting a comprehensive legal warning.
And they really don't aim low either. The letter is addressed directly to the very top of the command chain.
Yeah. It goes to the manager of the River Heaven building, the manager of the juristic person, the president of the juristic committee, and the vice president.
They are officially putting the entire leadership structure on notice.
And they bring heavy legal artillery to this fight. The letter heavily cites the Condominium Act BE 2022.
Yes.
They specifically invoke Section 36, which legally dictates the duties of the manager to properly maintain and update the co-owner registry. But the real hammer blow in this letter is their citation of Section 423.
Section 423 is basically the absolute crux of condominium governance in Thailand.
Really? Why is it so important?
For listeners who might only interact with the operational side of their building, like the gym or the pool, this section of the law is the engine of your rights. It mandates a highly specific, uncompromising timeline and procedure for calling a general meeting.
Okay.
The law strictly requires that invitation letters be sent to the co-owners no less than 7 days before the meeting date.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you there, because the logistics of that seem incredibly fragile in practice.
How so?
Well, River Heaven has 521 units, If I own a condo in that building, but my primary residence is in, let's say, London, and I haven't updated my address, how on earth is the building manager supposed to legally prove they served me a physical notice 7 days in advance?
It's difficult.
Do they have to use certified international mail? And does a Google form update somehow bypass that requirement?
That is precisely the friction point the law creates. The burden of proof is entirely on the juristing person.
So it's their problem to solve.
Exactly. If you live in London and your registered address in the official condo registry is in London, they must send it via registered mail to London with enough lead time to ensure delivery a full 7 days prior.
Wow.
So the Google form was very likely an attempt by management to drastically simplify this logistical nightmare. They were just trying to get everyone to provide a convenient, local, or easily accessible address to save time and money.
But by using a totally unsecured method to gather those convenient addresses, they've compromised the legality of the entire send-out.
That is exactly the problem. The law does not care about the management company's convenience.
Right.
The law cares about the enfranchisement of the co-owner. If the invitations are not properly and legally served to all 521 owners, the meeting itself is fundamentally structurally compromised.
And the author of the demand letter maps out this exact domino effect. If the unsecured Google form allows a malicious actor, or honestly, even just a careless typing error to change a mailing address, the real owner never receives their AGM invitation. And because they didn't receive the invitation, according to the strict procedures of Section 423, they have been legally disenfranchised.
And a disenfranchised owner has immense power under the law. They don't just sue for a small, administrative penalty. They can actually petition the court to completely revoke the entire general meeting.
The demand letter backs this up, too, by citing actual Supreme Court precedents. They list cases 1385-2568 and 5510-254.
Yeah.
Now, while we don't have the full court transcripts of these specific cases in our source stack, the context the author uses them in is crystal clear.
The precedent in Thai condominium law regarding improper notification is notoriously strict. In similar Supreme Court cases, the courts have consistently ruled that if a general meeting is called unlawfully, specifically meaning that the notices were not properly served to every verified owner on the registry, then the meeting itself lacks legal standing.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means every single resolution passed at that meeting is invalid and must be nullified.
Let's truly pause and let the scale of that risk sink in for a second. We are talking about a free two-question Google form, a digital shortcut meant to save a property manager, maybe 10 hours of data entry?
Probably not even that much.
But if one single owner out of 521 realizes their address was changed without their consent and takes this to court, they can literally freeze the financial and operational lifeblood of a multi-million-dollar asset.
The paralysis would be total.
Yeah.
If the AGM is nullified by the Supreme Court, everything falls apart. The approval of the upcoming year's annual budget, wiped out.
So the building can't legally spend money on major projects.
Exactly. The appointment or renewal of the juristic manager, avoided. The building effectively has no legal representative. Any changes to the building regulations, any approvals for major structural repairs, all of it is instantly paralyzed.
It's like pulling a single microscopic thread on a digital form and unraveling a massive corporate tapestry. The risk-to-reward ratio for management using this unsecured form is insanely skewed.
Completely skewed.
Why would any management company risk a Supreme Court injunction just to save a little time on mailing logistics?
Usually it stems from a profound disconnect between the operational staff on the ground and the legal realities of the Condominium Act.
They just don't know the law.
Often, no. The operational staff sees a logistical headache mailing 521 letters and reaches for a modern tool to solve it, completely unaware that they are casually walking into a legal minefield.
Which is why this demand letter is such a masterpiece. It doesn't just point out the minefield, it actively corners management and demands accountability.
It's a brilliant, reproducible blueprint for how an educated resident can force management to comply with the law.
The structure of the pushback is what makes it so effective. The author doesn't just rant or threaten vague legal action like you see in a lot of community disputes.
Right, there's no yelling here.
No, they formulate 9 highly specific, legally binding questions and demand a formal written explanation. They are essentially conducting a hostile deposition via paperwork.
Let's dive deep into these 9 questions, because they are a masterclass in applying pressure.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, question 1 attacks the foundational authority of the action. They ask, Under what specific condominium regulation or under which official committee resolution is this data collection authorized?
Oh, I love that. They are forcing management to prove they didn't just invent this procedure on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. If there is no documented committee resolution approving the use of a Google form for official registry updates, management is acting completely outside their legal mandate.
Question 2 directly targets the security flaw boss identified earlier in the chats. The letter asks, how is the juristic person verifying the identity of the person filling out the form to prevent outsiders or unauthorized proxies from changing the address?
And management cannot answer this without admitting the system is flawed because, as we established, there is zero verification built into the form.
It's a lose-lose question for them. Then, question 3 is this fascinating legal trap. They ask if this Google Form submission is considered an official legal notification of a change of address.
This is where it gets really tricky for management.
Right. If management answers yes, they are claiming that an unverified, unauthenticated web form holds the same legal weight as a formally signed document, which will never hold up in court.
But if they answer no, then why are they using it to dictate where critical legal documents are mailed?
Exactly. You can't have it both ways. This feeds perfectly into question 4, which addresses the primary registry.
Ah, yes.
In Thailand, the official household registration document is called the Tor Roar.14. It is a formal government-issued document. So the resident asks, will this Google form data overwrite the primary Tor Roar.14 registry in the building's official records?
And this was actually echoed in the chat logs, too. Another resident jumped in and asked the juristic line account directly. Has the juristic person already updated the Tor Roar.14, or are you using this form instead of checking the official Tor Roar.14?
It's another brilliant trap. If management admits to overwriting the official government-backed Tor Roar.14 data with unverified Google form data, they are admitting to literally corrupting the building's legal registry.
Yes.
But if they say they are using it instead of the Tor Roar.14, they admit they are running a shadow database disconnected from legal reality.
They're boxed in. Question 5 expands on this by asking about the legal weight of the form versus the Tor Roar.14 in the event of a dispute.
Which is the exact scenario we were just talking about.
Right. And then question 6 pivots back to boss's concerns, asking pointedly, who takes legal responsibility? Is it the juristic person or is it the management company? Smart if this data is leaked or breached.
They are forcing the two entities to figure out who holds the liability hot potato. Nobody wants to be holding that.
No, they definitely don't.
Question 7 demands to know the exact data retention protocol. Like, how long is this data kept and how will it be legally destroyed?
Which goes back to the PDPA compliance we discussed.
Yeah. And question 8 is where they completely lock down the logistics of the upcoming AGM.
How so?
The resident asks for the specific criteria management will use to prove delivery of the invitations. Like, what exactly constitutes evidence in their eyes? Is it the destination address, the postal receipt, the date stamp?
Oh, that's smart. They are establishing a rigid standard of proof before a single invitation is even placed in an envelope.
Exactly. If management agrees to these criteria in writing, they can't backtrack later if a resident claims they didn't get their letter and takes them to court.
And finally, question 9 establishes a strict timeline for compliance. The letter doesn't just ask these questions into the void, right?
Right. It gives management a hard 3-day ultimatum to respond in writing, or to respond before the invitations are actually sent out, whichever comes first.
The tension surrounding this timeline is really palpable in the chat logs, too. We have screenshots where boss is actively following up.
Yeah, he points out to the group that he sent direct messages to the juristic line account, raising these issues, and the screen capture shows those messages were left unread for 2 full days.
48 hours of radio silence.
48 hours.
In the context of a looming, legally mandated deadline that could invalidate an entire annual general meeting, leaving those messages unread is negligent at best and actively evasive at worst.
And you can see the community's frustration boiling over in these chats. Boss types out a message saying he refuses to let history repeat itself.
Yeah, he brings up some highly specific past grievances.
He mentions that there were 2 prior extraordinary general meetings, EGMs, held in the past, and he publicly asks the chat if anyone knows whether the funds used to organize those 2 past EGMs were ever returned to the central fund.
That detail introduces a massive new layer of systemic tension to this whole case study.
Because EGMs are expensive to run.
Very expensive. Organizing an EGM requires mailing hundreds of letters, renting a space, paying staff overtime. Boss implies a history of real financial opacity here.
He is basically suggesting that the management has previously spent central funds on meetings without providing clear accounting or returning unused budgets.
Exactly. It proves that the trust between the residents and the management is already completely shattered.
They aren't scrutinizing this Google form just because they love data privacy.
No, not at all.
They are scrutinizing it because they fundamentally believe management has mishandled their money in the past, and they refuse to give them even an inch of leeway.
And the author of the demand letter explicitly weaponizes this lack of trust by introducing the concept of personal liability.
Oh, right.
This is perhaps the most powerful tactic in the entire document.
The letter makes it terrifyingly clear. The management team cannot just hide behind the corporate shield of the juristic person or the property management company.
Exactly. The author states that if the AGM is revoked by the Supreme Court due to negligence in preparing the co-owner registry and sending out the notices, the individuals involved will be held accountable.
So, meaning the juristic manager, the executives of the management company, and the elected committee members who oversee them.
Yes, they could face personal, civil liability for the damages caused to the condominium.
If the building loses money because the AGM is delayed and contracts can't be signed, the residents are basically saying, we will sue you, the manager, personally, for that lost money.
And furthermore, they bring up the PDPA again, noting that any data leaks resulting from this unsecured form could lead to massive personal penalties under the Privacy Act.
They have essentially boxed management in with the law from every conceivable angle. It's really impressive.
It is. But, we've spent a significant amount of time analyzing this intense battle over the invitation letters and the data collection surrounding them.
Right.
But we must remember that the entire purpose of this fight, the reasons securing a valid invitation is so paramount, is fundamentally about getting access to the meeting so you can exercise your right to vote.
Because the invitation is simply the ticket to the arena. The vote itself is where the actual power is wielded.
Exactly. But consider the alternative reality here for a second.
Okay.
What happens if the management gets the logistics perfect? They use certified mail, everyone gets their valid invitation perfectly on time.
Everything is legal.
Right. But then on the day of the meeting, you physically cannot attend.
Yep.
You are traveling for work, you are ill, or you are an overseas investor. How do you exercise your power then?
Which leads us directly into the final and arguably most crucial piece of our source material.
Yes, it does.
It is this internal educational article circulating heavily among the residents titled, Proxy, Your Voice, or Someone's Tool.
This article is a phenomenal piece of grassroots education.
Yeah.
It brilliantly shifts the focus away from the administrative mechanics and directly into the democratic vulnerabilities of the condominium.
It starts with this really powerful, almost philosophical premise. It reminds every co-owner that a proxy form is not just a polite piece of paper you sign to help your neighbor hit the minimum attendance numbers for quorum.
People treat it like a favor.
Right. But a proxy is a literal vote. It is a quantifiable, legally binding piece of power.
It absolutely is.
It is the mechanism that determines the multi-million bat budget, selects the committee members who will oversee that budget, and decides which management company gets the lucrative contract to run the building.
And the authors of this article identify three major risk categories where this immense power is routinely abused.
Let's go through them.
The first category is what they bluntly call breaking the rules. And this focuses specifically on exceeding the legal limit for proxies.
Now, this is a critical mechanic that I think a lot of people misunderstand.
Oh, very much so.
Under Thai condominium law, which is almost always mirrored in a building's specific internal regulations, there is a hard cap. One single person can only receive a maximum of 3 proxies from other owners.
It is essentially an anti-monopoly rule designed for building governance.
Which makes sense.
The law explicitly prevents a scenario where one charismatic resident or maybe one aggressive investor walks into the AGM holding 50 proxy forms and single-handedly dictates the entire outcome of every vote, completely bypassing the will of the community.
But you're assuming the system is designed to protect the user, when in reality, bad actors constantly find ways around this.
They do.
The article warns about the dangers of hoarding proxies. If someone accepts more than 3 proxies, it is a direct, undeniable violation of the law.
And the consequences for that are severe. If a proxy holder uses 4 or 5 proxies, and those illegal votes are counted toward passing a resolution, that resolution is tainted.
Just like the bad invitation letters we discussed earlier.
Exactly. If illegal votes alter the outcome, the entire meeting's resolutions can be challenged and invalidated in court. The math of the quorum must be legally pure.
The article also highlights something called unauthorized voting.
Yes.
This happens when someone uses your proxy to vote on sudden, unannounced agendas that weren't even listed in the official invitation packet. Or they use a legally defective proxy form, maybe one missing a signature or a date, and just sort of pressure the management into accepting it to force a controversial vote through.
But the core warning of the article, the absolute highest risk factor they identify, revolves around the nature of the proxy form itself.
Okay, I want to use an analogy here because the way most people handle proxies is genuinely terrifying to me.
Let's hear it.
Signing a blank proxy form, where you just sign your name at the bottom and leave all the voting choices blank, allowing the proxy holder to decide how to vote on your behalf, is essentially like signing a blank check and handing it to someone you just met in the elevator.
That's a very apt comparison.
You might assume they are just going down to the lobby to buy coffee for the building staff. But they could legally take that check and buy themselves a new car using your bank account. You have handed them completely unchecked, discretionary financial and decision-making power in your name.
A blank check is the perfect analogy because it forces you to ask the most dangerous question of all.
Yeah.
Who exactly is cashing that check?
Right. Who are you giving this blank proxy to?
And this brings us to the massive, bold text warning dominating the article. Conflict of interest, or COI.
Which completely upends the traditional view of condominium management.
It does. Good governance, in literally any sector, relies entirely on a fundamental separation of powers. You must separate the people who execute the work from the people who approve and evaluate the work.
Basic checks and balances.
Exactly. But the article warns that the absolute highest risk of a conflict of interest occurs when juristic managers, active committee members, or the property management company itself, like the company SMART, mentioned throughout our sources, actively solicit and collect proxy votes from the residents.
Let's unpack the mechanics of why that is so structurally dangerous.
Okay.
Let's say I'm a busy owner. I don't have time for a 4-hour meeting on a Sunday. The building manager, who's always very polite to me in the lobby, asks if I can just sign a proxy so they can make quorum and get the meeting over with. I sign a blank one and give it to them. What happens next?
What happens next is that the building manager now possesses your legal voting power.
Okay.
And what are the primary agendas at the AGM? The very first agenda is usually the approval of the administrative budgets.
Oh, wow. Wait, so the manager is using my vote to approve the very budget that pays their salary and funds their department.
Yes, they are voting to give themselves your money.
That's insane.
But it gets worse. The next agenda is often the certification of the past year's performance.
So they are using my proxy to officially grade their own homework.
Yeah.
They're legally declaring, using my voice, that they did an excellent job.
Exactly. And the final, most critical agenda is the appointment or renewal of the property management contract. The management company can literally use the proxies they collected from oblivious residents to vote to renew their own highly lucrative employment contract for another year.
So they are effectively shielding themselves from being fired by the actual attending residents who might be unhappy with their performance.
It's a completely closed loop of power.
I give you my vote out of convenience, and you weaponize it to secure your job, approve your inflated budget, and certify your own flawless performance, completely neutralizing any actual oversight.
The article rightly states that this practice completely shatters the foundational principles of transparency and fairness.
I mean, yeah. How could it not?
It states it unequivocally.
Yeah.
The good principle is that those who exercise voting power should avoid having a conflict of interest in matters where they directly benefit.
So allowing the management company to round up proxies to approve their own contract renewal is basically a massive flashing red flag that the governance structure of the building is deeply compromised.
It's the biggest red flag there is.
So how do residents fight back against this entrenched system? Because the educational article doesn't just outline the apocalypse, it actually provides a highly tactical, 4-step survival guide for proxy voting.
It does. And this is the actionable advice every single listener needs to internalize.
Strategy number 1 is the most direct defense against the blank check. Specify the exact agenda on the proxy form.
Yes. If the official form allows for it, do not leave it blank. Take a pen and explicitly write down exactly how you want your vote cast for every single specific agenda item.
Right. I vote yes on the annual budget. I vote NO on purchasing the new gym equipment. I vote to abstain on the management contract renewal.
By doing that, You completely strip the discretionary decision-making power away from the proxy holder. They become a mere courier for your exact instructions.
Strategy number 2. Choose a truly trusted individual. If you absolutely must give a discretionary proxy, do not give it to the management and do not give it to a committee member who is up for re-election.
Give it to a neighbor you know well, someone who has absolutely no financial stake in the outcome of the votes and no conflict of interest.
Strategy 3 shifts from individual action to collective oversight. Actively monitor the meeting.
This is so important. Even if you aren't voting, even if you've already given your proxy, you still have the right to observe.
The article heavily encourages owners to attend and audit the process. Check the proxy counts out loud. Stand up and ask, has anyone accepted more than 3 proxies today? Demand to check the qualifications of the people holding the largest block of votes.
And that aggressive oversight leads perfectly into the final and perhaps most culturally difficult strategy. Build a culture of transparency.
The article includes a line that I think should literally be framed in every condo lobby. Asking questions is not creating conflict. It's protecting the community's money.
I love that line.
It's such a profound reframing of the dynamic. In many cultures, we are heavily conditioned to avoid making a scene. We don't want to be perceived as the difficult or complaining person in a public meeting.
Wow, when you are dealing with the management of a multi-million-dollar asset, which a 521-unit condominium complex absolutely is asking for financial receipts, demanding proof of legal authority, and verifying data collection methods isn't being difficult.
No.
It is exercising basic fiduciary responsibility. It is the fundamental definition of what being a co-owner actually means.
Let's take a breath and kind of zoom out here because we have covered a staggering amount of ground today.
We really have.
We started this deep dive looking at a simple QR code taped to a poster in a lobby. A poorly designed, unsecured Google form that asked for just 2 pieces of information to update a mailing address.
And by pulling on that single, seemingly innocuous thread, we uncovered a cascading series of catastrophic liabilities.
Yeah, we exposed massive PDPA violations regarding data collection.
We explored the rigid, unforgiving logistical requirements of Section 423 of the Condominium Act.
We analyzed the very real threat of Supreme Court intervention nullifying an entire AGM due to bad address data.
And we looked at how residents can use the threat of personal civil liability to force management back into compliance.
From that administrative battleground, we moved into the ultimate mechanism of control, the proxy vote.
We deconstructed how a simple piece of paper can be legally weaponized through conflicts of interest,
allowing management entities to essentially rubber stamp their own budgets and secure their own contracts using the uninformed votes of the very people paying their salaries.
It has been a profound journey, moving from a critique of administrative UX design to an exploration of fundamental democratic governance at the local level.
And what is the ultimate takeaway for you listening right now?
The relevance of this case study is absolute.
Whether you own a luxury condo, a modest apartment, or even if you just rent and care deeply about the community you live in, you need to reevaluate your relationship with the building. Your monthly central fund fees mean you are practically a shareholder in a massive corporate entity.
You are an investor. Your voice, your specific legal vote, and your personal data have immense, tangible legal value. Management companies know this, which is why they try to collect it so easily.
Wait, let me rephrase that actually. It's more than just knowing its value. They actively rely on your apathy to extract that value.
That's a good distinction.
When management asks for your data via a convenient link, you must demand to know how they are legally protecting it. When they casually ask for your proxy vote to make quorum, you must demand to know exactly how it will be utilized.
Stop handing out blank checks in the elevator just to be polite.
Because, as we've seen clearly with the residents of River Heaven, the difference between a smoothly running, legally compliant building and a total administrative nightmare is often just one educated resident who is willing to read the fine print, understand the law, and ask the hard questions.
That is exactly right.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. It's something that wasn't explicitly detailed in the source documents, but it hangs pretty heavily over this entire conversation about data, security, and voting.
What's that?
We've just spent an hour discussing how incredibly easy it is to manipulate a local condominium election using poorly designed digital tools and proxy hoarding. We saw how a free Google form could disenfranchise voters and corrupt a registry.
Right.
It makes you wonder if local microdemocracy at the building level is this easily compromised by the allure of digital convenience. What does that say about our growing push to integrate digital voting and unverified data collection into our actual municipal or national elections?
That is a terrifying thought.
We are constantly told that e-voting is the future of enfranchisement. But if we cannot even secure a 521-unit condo AGM against a malicious data entry, are we truly ready to scale that kind of digital vulnerability to a national level? Next time you get a digital administrative notice slipped under your door, ask yourself, are we innovating our way out of security? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your eyes open, protect your proxies, and never be afraid to ask, wait, where exactly does this QR code go?